Okay, tonight is Genesis chapter 26.
And there was a famine in the land, beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went unto Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. And the Lord appeared unto him, and said, Go not down into Egypt, dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries, and I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Because that Abraham obeyed my voice, and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws.
So as the chapter begins, it says there's a famine. Okay, we've heard this kind of thing before, all right? At least in one of the chapters about Abraham, it says it was a famine. Right? And so, as tends to happen, if there's a famine here, then they want to travel somewhere else where there's going to be more food. And typically, Egypt was the target place for that, right? That was kind of the big city, and where the big country, the big area where a lot of people lived, and so a lot of stuff was available there. So that's basically where Isaac was gonna go with his family. Right now, the only problem with that is that he's living in the land where Abraham had lived, and this was what's referred to as the Promised Land. Okay, so this was the land that was promised to Abraham and his descendants. So really, this is where God would want them to be. So it's all fine and well to say, well, we need to go over there to get food, but God is saying, I want you to be over here, right? So that's why it says that in the first verse he was on his way to Egypt, but in the second verse it says the Lord appears unto him and said, go not down into Egypt, okay? Dwell in the land that I'll tell you about. This is where I want you to be, right? Because this was the land he was going to give to Abraham's descendants, which of course is at this point is Isaac and his descendants. All right, so in 3, to stay in this land, I'll be with you, I'll bless you, and so forth. Okay, and I'll perform the oath which I swore to Abraham your father. God had made a promise to Abraham that he would bless all his descendants, that there would be many descendants, and that they would have a place to live. They would have the promised land, referred to as in later times as Canaan and other names. Okay, so this was the land. He says, you stay here. This is where I want you to be, and I'll live up to the promise that I made to your father Abraham, right? And then so in 4, it's just kind of enlarging on that. It says, I'll make your seed to multiply stars of heaven, and give unto your seed all these countries, all right? And I see all the nations of the earth will be blessed. So the same kind of promise he made to Abraham, right? And in particular now, he's pointing out to Isaac that there's a reason why he's going to keep this promise that he made to Abraham. As it says in verse 5, it's because Abraham obeyed my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, and so forth, right? Because Abraham did what he was told to do, so therefore the promise was made to him and will now be followed through to his descendants, okay? So, of course, Abraham is gone, but yet the promise remains, and so Isaac was the one the promise was going to go through, and so it's going to go through him and to his sons or grandchildren or so forth. It's going to move through his family.
And Isaac dwelt in Gerar, and the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, She is my sister. For he feared to say, She is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at a window, and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah his wife.
So it says that Isaac did what he was told to stay in this area of what's called Gerar, right? And now he tells the people something, right? And very similar, or really exactly the same as what happened with his father, right? Here it says the men of the place asked him, "Oh, is that your wife?" "No, that's not my wife. It's my sister," right? Because he says, I'm afraid if I say it's my wife, then they'll be tempted to kill me, so they can take her away, right? So just as we said with Abraham, though, so I guess he was willing to have them take her away, just as long as it didn't affect him, okay? But so that's why he says he fears. So he said, "It's my wife. Rebekah's fair to look upon. I don't want them to kill me to get at her." All right, and so I guess for some period of time they carried on with this carrying on with this brother-sister thing, right? And until, and this is in the verse 8, it says, when he'd been there for a long time, the king looked out the window one day, and now it says he just saw Isaac sporting with Rebekah, his wife, whatever that means, right? I guess, treating her in a way, looking up, gee, this wouldn't be how a brother would act with his sister, right? And whether they were kissing or whatever it was. This doesn't look right to me, right? This is not how a brother and a sister would act with each other.
And Abimelech called Isaac and said, Behold, of a surety she is thy wife, and how saidst thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, Because I said, lest I die for her. And Abimelech said, What is this thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldst have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, He that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death.
All right, so the king looks out and sees that they're acting in a way that would not be normal for brother or sister, and so he calls them in. He says to Isaac, okay, now you're not fooling me. He says, Behold, of a surety she is thy wife. All right, I mean, I can just tell by the way you're interacting, and again, whatever that was, I could tell this is your wife. This is not your sister. So therefore, what are you trying to pull here? All right, what are you doing to us? It says, why'd you say that she's your sister? And of course, his answer is the same as what his father's was. He said, well, I was afraid that somebody would kill me to get her. Right? And they said, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get us in trouble here. That you're trying to make us do something wrong to be taking another man's wife. Right? And so in 10 it says, what is it that was done? One of the people might have lightly had, it's an interesting word here, it's an L-I-E-N, which normally we would think of a lean, like, but I guess it's supposed to be like lie, you should have really been lied or something. But anyway, this might likely have slept with your wife, and then you would have brought guilt upon all of us, all right? Because here we are, you're a man of God, and now you're here with your wife, and so somebody could easily have, tried to sleep with her because thinking she wasn't married, all right? So why'd you do this, right? And so and now he turns around and the king does and announces it to all people, all right? So imagine how embarrassing it would have been, right? All right, so, okay, this woman here who we heard was his sister is not his sister, it's his wife, all right? So therefore, as he said 11, anybody that touches either one of them is going to be put to death, all right? So I don't want anybody touching that woman, and nobody kills this man that he was so afraid of, that's why he called her his sister, all right? So nobody touches either one of them, all right? Because the penalty would be you'll be put to death, all right? So the king stood up for what was right at that point, all right? Even though that Isaac was afraid to make it known how it really was, but the king said, okay, we'll put this right. So now you have to be afraid. Nobody's going to harm either one of you.
Then Isaac sowed in that land and received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. And the man waxed great and went forward and grew until he became very great. For he had possession of flocks and possession of herds and great store of servants, and the Philistines envied him. For all the wells which his father's servants had digged in the days of Abraham his father, the Philistines had stopped them and filled them with earth. And Abimelech said unto Isaac, Go from us, for thou art much mightier than we.
All right, so having gotten past this episode with the sister versus the wife thing, all right, now settle down to business here. It says Isaac sowed in the land, and in the same year, it says received 100-fold. So remember, there was a famine in the land, all right? But yet, in spite of there being a famine, it says his crops produced 100-fold. So, in other words, it's a lot more than even would have been expected. And what that would indicate was that he was blessed by God, right? And in spite of all the subterfuge earlier, right? He was blessed by God. That here his crops were blessed, and that in spite of the fact that there was a famine in the land, which usually when it refers to a time of famine, what that means is that the crops aren't growing, all right? I mean, that's really the only reason there would be a shortage of food, right? Because obviously it's not like today where you have companies that ship stuff here and there, right? I mean, they had to grow their own stuff, right? So there's fruit, vegetables, whatever. And so if the crops didn't grow, then there was a shortage. And there was a shortage, there was a famine. So that was the condition they were in, right? But yet it says his grew 100-fold, right? So that's why it says 13 says the man waxed great and grew until he became very great. Yeah, people looked and said, wow, this guy is blessed. This guy's, something's special about this guy. All of his crops are growing. So it says he had possession of flocks, herds, and lots of servants. it says that the Philistines who lived around him, it says they envied him, okay, that they were like, they were jealous. They said, well, why should his stuff be doing so good? I mean, none of our stuff is growing, all right, and here he gets 100-fold. What's so special about him? So in 15 it says that they take action to, as people sometimes do when they're jealous, all right? They say, well, we don't like this. So it says they went to his wells and they stopped them up, so they wouldn't produce water anymore, all right? It says, in fact, these were the wells that his father Abraham had originally set up. As it says in verse 15, it says, all the wells his father digged in the days of Abraham, the Philistines stopped them and filled them with earth, all right? Isn't that cruel, all right? They put earth down there to stop them up so that it wouldn't produce any water. All right, so with all this drama going on, it says in verse 16, the king says to Isaac, you know what, it'd be better if you just kind of go, all right? That you're clearly somehow more blessed than we are, all right? And it's causing my people to do things that are not good. So why don't you just go? And this way, my people want to be envious of you, and you can go bring your blessing somewhere else, all right? So he kind of tells them to leave at this point.
And Isaac departed thence, and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar, and dwelt there. And Isaac digged again the wells of water, which they had digged in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them after the death of Abraham, and he called their names after the names by which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants digged in the valley, and found there a well of springing water.
All right, so it says Isaac left that particular area. It says it pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar. All right, and now they're going to dig more wells. All right, so I guess there were also wells here that Abraham had originally set up, but they had to dig to find water. I don't. I'm not really an expert on how wells work. All right, but obviously just making a well and digging down doesn't guarantee you're going to get anything. You got to be able to dig in the right place. You got to find some flowing water to fill the well. All right, so that was the challenge. All right, so it says in 18 they were dealing with more wells that had been stopped up by the Philistines over time. Right, I guess after Abraham died, I guess they were in the well stopping business. All right, that they went ahead and affected these wells so that they wouldn't work. All right, and but it says 19 says Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found a well of springing water. All right, so here again God was with them, that they found a new source of water. This way they could have those wells working once again. All right, so can you see the hand of God here at work, blessing the different parts of his life.
And the herdmen of Gerar did strive with Isaac's herdmen, saying, the water is ours. And he called the name of the well Esek, because they strove with him. And they digged another well, and strove for that also. And he called the name of it Sitnah. And he removed from thence, and digged another well, and for that they strove not. And he called the name of it Rehoboth. And he said, for now the Lord hath made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land.
Again, lest you would figure things might go easier now that they kind of moved to a different area. It was not the case. You see in 20 it says they come and they said, hey, this water's ours, all right? That you just found. Never mind that you dug and found it, but it's really our water, so we don't want you using it. So again, to not make a problem, in 20 it says, okay, you know what? Let's just move on. We'll dig another well. So 21 they dug another well. So that one's ours too, right? So wherever they were going, it seemed like there was contention for it, right? And by the way, that's what it means when it says they strove for it. I guess it means they argued over it or whatever, right? That they wanted to obtain it, right? So finally in 22 we try again to dig another well, and this time for whatever reason it says they strove not, so they let him have this one, all right? So they called the name Rehoboth and said, okay, now the Lord has made room for us, and we can be fruitful in this land, because now we're able to actually have a well that they're not going to throw dirt in, and they're not going to take away from us, and we can actually just use the well to get water, which was the whole point in the first place.
And he went up from thence to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared unto him the same night, and said, I am the God of Abraham thy father. Fear not, for I am with thee, and will bless thee, and multiply thy seed for my servant Abraham's sake. And he builded an altar there, and called upon the name of the Lord, and pitched his tent there, and there Isaac's servants digged a well.
From there, as it goes to Beersheba, and now he has an experience, all right? He has the Lord speaking to him, and He says, I'm the God of Abraham, my father. If you're not, I'm with thee, and I'm going to bless you for Abraham's sake, right? Similar to what he said at the beginning of the chapter, but, I think he's acknowledging what the Lord is, that, okay, that now you're where I want you to be, right? That you're not trying to get to Egypt, you're not trying to go live, but that king's area where you have to fake, who's your wife or your sister, and now you're where I need you to be, right? So I'm going to bless you and multiply your seed and so forth, all right? And and Isaac responds to this. This is, he built an altar and called upon the name of the Lord, right? So he's worshiping God here, which is, again, what the Lord would want. So this is a good relationship you can see here, right? And they celebrated by digging a well, right? Apparently it was an important thing, right? They went ahead and dug another well, right? This way they could have water in this particular area also.
Then Abimelech went to him from Gerar, and Ahuzeth, one of his friends, and Phicol, the chief captain of his army. And Isaac said unto them, Wherefore come ye to me, seeing ye hate me, and have sent me away from you? And they said, We saw certainly that the Lord was with thee, and we said, Let there be now an oath betwixt us, even betwixt us and thee, and let us make a covenant with thee, that thou wilt do us no hurt, as we have not touched thee, as we have done unto thee nothing but good, and have sent thee away in peace. Thou art now the blessed of the Lord.
Right, so if you recall earlier in the chapter, he was in the area where this king was, Abimelech, and then there was all the drama, so Abimelech said maybe you should go away, and so they went away. All right, well now, here comes the king and a couple of his representatives with him to pay Isaac a visit. All right, so this is, Abimelech went to him, and one of his friends and the chief captain of the army, all right, they come to pay him a visit. So it's not too surprising. Isaac says, what do you want with me? All right, the last time I saw you, you told me to get out. You told me to go away. In fact, the way he puts it is, wherefore come ye to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away? All right, what have I done now to have the honor of this visit? All right, and the last time you said you really didn't even want me around. Okay, so the response was, it says, we see that the Lord is with you. Right, and so therefore we want to make sure we have an agreement here as to what is not going to happen. Right, and what they were afraid was going to happen was that somehow he was going to call the power of God down upon them, right? Because I think that's, he says, we see you're a blessed man of God and very powerful, and things happen for you. You dig wells and water's there, or you plant crops and it's 100-fold, right? So clearly you're not like a normal person here, right? The power of God is with you. So we think it would be best to have what they call an oath between us, all right? So some kind of an agreement or a treaty, all right, where you say you're not going to suddenly declare war on us, okay? Not that Isaac was going to do that anyway, but this is, a lot of times people think the way they themselves would think, all right? So somebody who figured, well, if I have the advantage over you, I'll come and try to wipe you out. So then they think, well, if somebody else has the advantage over me, that they're going to do that to me, all right? Even though that was not even on Isaac's radar. I mean, he had no interest in them or doing anything with them. But they said, why don't we just kind of, get an agreement here, right? And I like what it says in 29. You got to wonder if Isaac was like rolling his eyes at this point. It says, okay, we haven't done anything to you but good things, all right? We treated you really good, and we sent you away in peace and so forth. And so, you just go ahead and make this agreement with us. We don't have to be worried about what you might do to us in the future. All right, and then at the end of 29 it says, thou art now the blessed of the Lord. See, so that was the reason. That was the reason. It's not that Isaac had any kind of an army or anything, right? But it says, so somebody with this kind of power of God with them, we're a little nervous, all right? Even though they weren't necessarily even big believers in God, but it's something different about him. Like I said, he digs wells and there's water, he plants the crops and it grows miraculously. So we're a little nervous here. So we'd like to have this official agreement that you're not going to do anything to hurt us now.
And he made them a feast, and they did eat and drink. And they rose up betimes in the morning, and sware one to another. And Isaac sent them away, and they departed from him in peace. And it came to pass the same day that Isaac's servants came, and told him concerning the well which they had digged, and said unto him, We have found water. And he called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba unto this day.
All right, so for this occasion that they came to visit, all right, so he was a good host. says he made a feast, and they did eat and drink, all right, and they slept over, and so the next morning, now this is they made it official. This is, they swear one to another. So that was the actual agreement. Now, and how that comes about, I'm not sure whether it's just like we shook hands on it or whatever it is. All right, they made it official that not going to cause any trouble for each other. All right, and so it says Isaac sent them away. They departed in peace, and then so they went away happy. They came, they saw an agreement, and they went back with the agreement. Like I said, for Isaac, I don't think it meant anything because he had no intention of messing with them anyway. But anyway, he was happy to make this agreement. Right, and so now in 32, right, and again, maybe this is really just showing God's blessing upon somebody, right? Because I don't think I ever noticed how many times in this chapter, right? It says down 32, it says they went and they dug a well and they found water again, right? So, so it would appear that was like, it seems to me that was God's blessing, right? Because every time he did something right, they dug a well and they found water, right? And so I suspect it was a challenge normally, but with God's blessing, this was able to happen, right? So they had to get another well now that's going to produce water.
And Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Bashmath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, which were a grief of mind unto Isaac and to Rebekah.
Right, so you can see the time is passing now, right? It was just last chapter that Isaac and Rebekah had twin sons, all right? They had the babies, and now it says Esau, which is their oldest son by just seconds, as you recall, is now 40 years old. So 40 years have passed since the last chapter, right? So it says Esau is 40 years old. He took to wife two women, Judith, the daughter of the Hittite, and Bashemath, the daughter of somebody else who was a Hittite. Okay, now, I should point out that the Hittites are the ungodly people, the ones who kind of live in the area where they live, all right? And so that's why in 35 it says it's was a source of grief unto his parents, because he's marrying pagan women, all right, who were not believers in God. And so here they still had some hopes that both of their sons would grow to be godly men and raise godly families. And now here he's tying himself to women who were pagan, ungodly women, right? And in fact, they're from the same general group that, if you remember the story of when Isaac was going to be getting married, and Abraham made his servant, promise me you're not going to give my son a wife from around here, all right? That's why he sent them all the way back to where they came from to get Rebekah and bring her there. He said, I don't want you to make him or have him marry somebody from here. Well, now this was the same thing happening, one generation further, right? So here was Isaac's son now choosing a wife, or in this case, two wives from this particular area where it was ungodly women. So, I mean, if he's marrying that way, well, then now we're concerned. I mean, as it was, he already doesn't care about his birthright. Well, now he doesn't seem to care about having a godly family, because he's marrying women who don't believe in God. Okay, so that's the reason for 35 says, which were a grief of mine unto Isaac and Rebekah, right? Because now they're worried as to what's going to happen from here because of the choice he's made and who to marry.